Imagine, Episode 12 by Bernard King and Nicholas Bloomerine. Jerome's wasp sting takes on a terrible significance, and Jemma is learning how to shoot. They met outside the chapel, the grey, utilitarian face of the meeting place of the godly, broken by red cascades of climbing roses, tumbling from gardens on either side of two of Hampstead's Edwardian gems. "Don't tell me you shot yourself," she laughed. His sting had cauliflowered, from the tiny red dot into a warning blue and yellow bubble. A warning he heeded, making a visit to his local surgery for a more professional treatment. "I annoyed a wasp and it stung me," he said. Gingerly he pressed the dressing. The Furian wasp had done a good job. 2 days after, his arm was still tender and throbbing. "No!" He had been about to kiss her, but the kiss, unused, fell to the pavement between them. The smiling woman who had walked towards him a moment ago had transformed. The dressing on his arm had stolen her eyes, 2 large blue circles that were widening by the second. "When?" Her question was breathed with urgency. "Just after you left." "Oh, no." Jerome rocked. Her unexpected weight, thudding against his chest, flattened him against the wall. He juggled between mystification and surprise. A wasp sting was no big deal. It could not justify such emotion. "What time were you stung?" Her question, trembling and quiet, was lined by fear. "Is it important? Jerome, please, don't say it was around 5 o'clock." "It was around 4 o'clock." "Oh, my God." Now her voice had tumbled down 2 flights of stairs. "Yesterday," slender fingers tightened around his arm, "Nicholas was stung at 5 o'clock. A wasp?" "Yes, a wasp." The nagging rumble in the background that he realized was now with him during his waking hours woke up to a low, persistent whine. His character was shifting again. Nicholas was winding him in. Past, present, and now the future. But this time it was in reverse. Until the yellow and black carnivore, carrying a dagger of poison, plunged its sting into his arm, Nicholas had called the shots, reporting incidents after they had happened. Now, Jerome had been promoted to leader. He had been stung an hour before the author. What happened to him, Jerome, would happen to Nicholas. They had moved from the world of words into the world of reality. Nicholas's story had become physical. "It's as if he's moving into my body," Jerome muttered quietly. The low wall outside the chapel became their bench as they sat side by side in silence. Jemma was unusually fidgety. Jemma was never fidgety. Her eye contact avoiding tactics told there was more news to come, and it was probably not good news. Twice she took his hand before, with a squeeze, the story came tumbling out. Nicholas had been writing for over 24 hours, something he had not done for years. Also, he had not had a drink for 2 days. He had been lost in his cloud. Again, behavior that had not happened for a long time. And whatever he was writing was causing him much excitement. It had taken both her and the maid 10 minutes of hammering on his study door before he could be persuaded to open it. Twice their maid had served him meals, but the frenzy of his typing could not be interrupted, and they were collected untouched. He was still working when she had left, so she had been unable to read what he was writing. "I think I know what is about to happen," he muttered. Jemma looked at him, shocked and startled. The low, persistent whine in his body notched upwards, turning into a howl, sharpening his astonishment. The words had left his vocal cords before he had realized he even thought of them. Was this the start of Nicholas edging into his body? Jemma looked at him wide-eyed. "It's only a guess, but I'm sure he's killing off the woman in his story," he said. Was it a guess, or had Nicholas actually got inside his head? Was he swapping sanity for the ridiculous? Why had he thought of that? What had pinged the idea into his head? Was he now thinking like a writer? How did writers think? Was he changing his character? Unanswerable questions poured in, soaking him in bewilderment. Was this the start of some sort of transition? Was Jerome changing into Nicholas? Should he tell Jemma how he was feeling? But then, how could he tell her how he was feeling? He didn't even know himself. If someone's going to try and kill me, then I'd better learn to defend myself. Her words snapped through his confusion, bringing him back to Pond Street. Sliding her bottom off the wall, Jemma took his hand. His brief pause brought her question. What on earth's the matter, Jerome? With all this going on, you need to ask? He pursed his lips. Again, that was not him speaking. He did not snap at people, and certainly not at Jemma. She stroked the side of his face and smiled encouragement. With a playful tug, she pulled him off the wall. He creaked on a smile. He would have to watch how he spoke in future. In fact, he would have to watch a hell of a lot in the near future. Keeping himself as one character was going to be a battle. He paused in front of the door of the chapel, but already his mind was inside. He had a loaded gun and was standing next to Jemma. Supposing he lifted the gun, aimed and shot her. He would have done Nicholas's work. The woman in the story would be dead. Nicholas would have his material for the next chapter. His feet would not move. He could not go in. He could not take the chance. Jerome! She was going through the door. He must make a move. He must make a move with his body and with his head. This was stupid thinking. Why had he allowed it to happen? He was giving himself to Nicholas. No, he was not. Annoyance nudged him forward. Why had he even considered he could be controlled by a stranger? Taking a deep breath, he strode into the chapel, turned right, and descended the steps into the shooting range. Jerome vouched for Jemma, indicating he would take all responsibility for her while she was on the range, thus avoiding the necessity for her to become a member of the club to keep within the law. Below ground, the silence pressed into their ears, their hearing now searching for sound. The tinkle and clicks as Jerome loaded the revolver, the brushing of their clothing, and even the sharp intake of breath as she took the loaded weapon became highly defined in the dead atmosphere. Slowly she raised the pistol into the position she had been shown, and gently, very gently, pressed through on the trigger. Blinded, deafened, and injured, the bang was big, sudden, and deafening. Her ears sang painfully, even through the protectors. The revolver kicked, biting into the skin between her thumb and forefinger, where she had not held it tightly enough. The sensation of tiny particles hitting her cheeks could have been false, as there was nothing to see, but the acrid swirl of burnt cordite was real, stinging her inner nose and again, possibly, imagination singeing her ears. Of course, the round whistled hopelessly away, leaving the small square target unmarked. She laid the pistol on her shelf, her eyes screwed shut. Jerome picked it up. She had another 9 bullets. It's not nice. I don't like it. The detonation still clattered around her head. Even with the protectors removed, her hearing had still not cleared. I shall not do that again. A marksman on the far side of the range opened up with an automatic. The explosions and the ring as the bullets hit amplified to ear-splitting level. It was too much. Jemma ran, her face screwed in pain, through the soundproof doors, up the steps, and still with her hands to her ears, flopped down on the nearest pew. Flicking the weapon empty, Jerome stuffed it in his pocket, snatched up his case, and chased after her. She was bent over the stall, the blonde sweep of her tresses curling onto the pew before her. Such violence, she whispered, in the house of God. Jerome did not understand religion. He did not understand it, and he did not understand those who did. His conclusion was, if people needed it, There was plenty of it around, but he was pleased to see that at last empty churches were being put to a good use. They were being turned into flats where people could live. "Please go back, you must think I'm silly." He squeezed her hand, took the revolver from his pocket, and slipped it back into its case. Jemma's reaction was not unusual. He had seen many new recruits in the army dropping their rifles on the firing range and running. Firing live ammunition for the first time attacks several emotions at once, leaving one either dazed, shocked, or frightened, or, often, a portion of each as the smoke cleared. They left the chapel, the bright sunlight warming away the chill from the dark chapel, and turned towards the heath. Jerome had spent his childhood on Hampstead Heath, swimming in the ponds, playing cricket on the extension, tennis in the park, and the path they had taken towards the Vale of Health, a route he had unconsciously followed, was one he had well trodden. With Jennifer, his wife, he had held hands between these trees, planned their future, grew up together, shared problems, innocent and hopeful, unaware and vulnerable. At the next fork he moved off the track where the memory of his wife had darkened. Too many emotions were peeping from the trees, and too many forgotten shadows lurking on every bend. They sat on a bench above the Vale of Health pond, a favourite spot for fishing for large pikes that allegedly lived in the depths but were never actually seen. The water's edge had been a wild bramble of bushes and reeds to be pushed through and scratched by in his childhood. Now flats had been built almost to the water's edge on one side, and the natural jungle had vanished, replaced by manicured lawns, landscape bushes, and council-disciplined flower beds. In the warmth and sunlight amongst the colours and the calm, watching couples stretched close on the grass, relaxation and reality ruled, easing the threatening edge off Nicholas and his menacing script. "You know your way around here." She sat back on the bench, her arm around his shoulders, her finger tickling his neck. He told her his childhood stories, sailing boats on the Whitestone Pond, riding bikes in the woods beside West Heath Road and being chased by the police for doing so. He told her about the sandpit in the middle of the heath that used to be a firing range during the war, and how he used to search for spent bullets in the sand. "So it was all bullets and guns even when you were—" Gemma's smile faded, igniting the pain on the nape of his neck, stinging deeper from her tightening grip. Unblinking, her stare crossed the pond to the small causeway leading from the Vale of Health. The trees and shrubs between the pond and the track broke the view of strollers from the water. Some stopped to peer into the green mirror between the trees, or to haul their offspring back from the jaws of the mythical fish. Oh my God! She was tracking someone. There were 10 or 15 people on the path, shuttered in and out of view as they passed behind the greenery. Jerome could not see any sign of God. Careful. She was pulling, urgently tucking him off the bench. Slowly they backed up the small rise, up to the path, to vanish behind some bushes. Her eyes never left the ambling line on the opposite path. "We must go." The taxi they scrambled into had just dropped its fare at the Priors, the large Victorian block of flats that wedges onto the heath above the pond. The dash up the hill had not left time for words. Jerome had to wait until she had finished directing the driver. "What?" he asked, the worried face that turned toward him. "What was that all about?" She shrank back down into the seat, trying to ease her trembling. "Nicholas." "What?" He was on the path on the other side of the road. She had told him she was going to the cinema. He should not have been there. He never went for walks. He had never been to Hampstead Heath, and he hated the sunshine. And, she shook her head, Hampstead Heath is a long way from Grosvenor Square. Her explanation took them down the High Street and along Fitzjohn's Avenue. In silence, they left the cab at Swiss Cottage, outside a pub. "Could I have a whisky?" He left her at the table, mangling her handkerchief between nervous fingers. Nicholas was getting closer. Words on pages had changed to communal wasp stings, and now they were in the same airspace. He slid onto a stool as he waited for the barman to bring his drinks. His weak legs needed support. What would be the next event? There really was only one left. Sometime, somewhere, somehow, they would meet. What would happen? How would they react to each other? Would Jemma be present? The questions trotted behind him relentlessly as he carried their drinks to the table. "Do you think he saw you?" he said. Her whiskey was a double. He felt she needed it. She shook her head. "He would have torpedoed across the pond to get at me." 10 minutes of intense speculation ping-ponging between them brought no answer to their rally. Jerome had an idea, a crazy idea, so crazy he kept it to himself. That he and Nicholas were getting closer was undeniable. This afternoon, Nicholas had crossed half of London. Why? Could it be possible that Jerome was in some manner attracting him? "The only way I can help," Jemma set down her empty glass, "is to read the manuscript as soon as possible." She could then tell him what the characters and hopefully Nicholas were about to do. "You know, Jerome, I think you're attracting him." Jerome started. He had just thought of that. First Nicholas, and now his wife was reading his mind. He must have a head that leaked like a sieve. But she was not accusing. It was worse. She was establishing. There seems to be some sort of... Her hands palmed upwards hopelessly. There was no word for what she wanted to describe. What he did today is completely out of character. Her gaze was meaningful, and he was walking straight. Jerome downed his pint in one, set down the glass, and then stared at it in horror. He had never done that before. He had tried with his mates in the army, but never succeeded. The call of alcohol had always been for pleasure. That shout had been a necessity. "Do you usually drink in the middle of the afternoon?" Her glance switched between the drained glass and his drained expression. No, he didn't, and he could not remember ever having desired a drink so much in his life before as he did at that moment. "Nicholas has stopped drinking, and you are starting." She was talking slowly, but he got the idea quickly. Even as the concept cuddled him, logic struggled it back. She was suggesting he was changing characters with her husband. "It could be the first step," she whispered. It wasn't. His first step was away from the pub, away from the idea, and away from Nicholas. Nevertheless, he promised himself, in the middle of the pavement, that from now he would watch his alcohol intake. "It's just something we must be aware of." He knew it was an excuse, but an excuse he could live with. But even that was a complication. He not only had to live his own life, he also had to be careful he was not living someone else's at the same time. They parted at the underground station, Jemma taking a cab and Jerome descending the stairs to the platform thoughtfully. He had kept much stress out of his life by asking his problems a simple question: "What can I do about you?" If he had no control over the situation, he would refuse to allow the complication to burrow into his thoughts. If a solution was apparent, he would tailor it to fit the circumstances and then file it in his grey matter for future use. Nicholas's book was beyond their, and it seemed, the creator's control. Now it had to be wait and see. Guessing and worrying were a waste of time. He would see how the game had changed when the next page arrived. But as his life lived over the next 2 days, he realized his formula, for once, was not working. He was watching himself, making mental note of his actions, where he was going, and what he was doing. Was he craving for a drink? Had any new habits entered his life? His daily routine did not appear to have changed. No further stress seemed to have arrived in his life. His days flowed as smoothly as before. No, he had not changed an iota. Except, of course, he had. The act of watching himself was an addition he had not wanted. The small flat parcel was behind the dustbin, where the note from the delivery company pushed through his letterbox said it would be. Although the address was printed and there was no sign of the sender's address, he knew instantly who had sent it. The perfume floated up from the packet to meet him. Her perfume. Why had Jemma not called him? Why had she not arranged a meeting? Did she not want to be around when he opened the parcel? It was another chunk of Nicholas's manuscript, this time thicker than before, and now there was an addition. Nicholas had chosen the title for his new book. Imagine stood out across the cover. In the background, fir trees faded into a mist, the title disappearing with them, emphasized by smaller and smaller type in fading green. The atmosphere created by the cover was mysterious and a trifle spooky. Read it. It will help you keep up with our plot. The note was stapled to the corner of the page. I wanted a different sort of affair, it continued. I'm certainly getting it. So am I. Jerome's response was a mutter. One thing was 100% certain. They were no longer in control of their lives, and it seemed neither was Nicholas. The book Nicholas was writing was the superintendent. According to Jemma's note, Nicholas was working flat out on the book, and, to her dismay, he had changed the password on his computer, making it impossible for her to see his work when he crawled out from his chair with exhaustion. It was the first time he had ever changed his password. As Jemma was the only person to have access to his work, it was a signal he no longer wanted her to see the plot unfurling. Why? Why suddenly was his wife forbidden to see his work? If Jerome could see no difference in his daily living, Nicholas was definitely on the change. But last night, Nicholas had fallen asleep, leaving his latest creation aglow on the screen. After hauling, pushing, and dragging the shaying shape to its room to collapse onto its bed, Jemma rushed a copy of the manuscript to Jerome. Jerome was no writer. Literature had never really wrapped itself about him, bringing the warm glow it had to many of his friends. But even to a Philistine like himself, when he compared the pages of Nicholas's latest book with his previous tomes, the change in style and voice was startling. Blood and Thunder had dissolved into themes of love and the rustle of silk, and the tone had turned to a gentle lilt of tenderness and romance. It was without doubt their story, reported not in detail, but shown to the reader with all the guile of a master practicing his craft. The ring of the pebbles crunching beneath their feet flew back, echoing and singing off the high sea walls. Yes, Jerome had noticed the noise from the stones on the beach at Brighton as they slipped and slithered on the pedals, deep in thought. But it was a noise in his background, noticed but not. Nicholas had brought Jerome's background forward, spun words around it, and made it a small entertainment. The latest 20 pages, Jerome had to admit, were good, bloody good. For someone who read only instruction manuals and police novels, he had to admit it was the sort of book he might buy. But the grimness of the situation would not let go. He would not have to buy the book. He was living the story. Nicholas is killing Jemma in the book, and it will be Jerome who shoots her in the book. This cannot possibly happen. Or can it? Listen to the next episode of Imagine.